Good afternoon. My name is Marty Johannes, and I'm the Careers and Finance Librarian for the Johnson County Library. And I thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this program, Prevent Scams, Fraud, and Identity Theft. This program is being recorded and it will be accessible in our online programs archive. Our presenter this afternoon is Carol Condo Pineda, counsel in the Federal Trade Commission's Division of Consumer and Business Education. Carol leads teams to create and distribute free consumer advice online, in print, on video, and on social media to help people spot scams and manage their money. She heads up the agency's outreach through public libraries, such as our own, as well as the Military Consumer Partnership and outreach through organizations that serve people with disabilities. Carol began her FTC career as a staff attorney, then served for several years as a liaison between the FTC and the U.S. Congress. Subsequently, she served on temporary assignment as an attorney for the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Energy and Commerce. She earned her AB from Harvard College and her JD from Suffolk University School of Law. We'll have time for questions and answers after the presentation. As your questions come to mind, please submit them in the chat, and then we'll have Carol answer them at the end. And now I'm going to turn the program over to Carol. Thank you, Carol.
Marty, thank you so much. I appreciate that gracious and very warm welcome. And thanks everybody for taking some time this afternoon to come and maybe get some helpful advice about spotting and avoiding scams. So let me tell you a little bit about the Federal Trade Commission first. We're the nation's consumer protection agency. We bring competition antitrust cases as well as consumer protection cases. They're all part of that same ecosystem, right? You know, keeping the marketplace healthy and keeping competition healthy for consumers. We do that by bringing law enforcement actions and investigations, by consumer education, like what we're doing today. And we develop a really robust network of partnerships because, you know, we're a pretty small agency. We can't manage to hit every consumer in the country on our own. We really depend on our partners to connect us with people so that we can get all of these anti-scam messages out to as many people as possible. And that's why we have such strong relations with the libraries across the country, because they're really our boots on the ground to get the word out to help people avoid some of these scams. So let's jump right in. I've got a lot of things to talk about today, and we want to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about the scope of the fraud problem. I'm going to give you some stats from our recent data book, and then we'll talk about how some of these scams are evolving. You know, you see a lot of the same scam type behavior, the same basic mechanism of a scam, but then there's a twist. Every so often there's a twist. And so it's helpful to know how those things are coming along because you might not have seen them yet. And if you know about it, you're much more better able to avoid it. So first off, when you go to reportfraud.ftc.gov, we'll talk a little bit about that later, you can file a report with the FTC about any kind of scam that you may have encountered, whether you lost money or not. We want to hear about it. And we compile that data into a data book. So every year, probably end of February, we talk about all the reports, the accumulated data we got from the year before. So for the 2022 data from last year, we got 2.4 million reports. That's pretty much the same level it's been for quite a while, probably 10 years or so. We get somewhere in the vicinity of 2. That usually goes up a little bit every year. The interesting thing this year, 2022, is that complaints were actually down from 2021, but the amount of money lost was up, way up. So you can see the amount of money lost was at least 8.8 billion. I think they actually rounded that number up to 9 billion after the numbers originally came out, as they had some more interim data. This is the slide that I had that showed the official 8.8 billion. But that's more than 2 billion over the losses from 2021. So even the amount of a jump is pretty huge, and people are losing lots of money to these kinds of scams. I always like to underline this because people assume that older people are more at risk for scams. They may be losing more money. There may be more of a problem, and that younger people are automatically clued in to what scams are out there and what they need to be looking for. It's not always necessarily the case. So from the data, we're seeing younger people report losing money to fraud more often than older people do. It's a pretty big percentage. There's about a 20 percentage point difference. But when younger people did lose money, I mean, when older people did lose money, they lost more. They lost higher amounts. So people age 70 and older had a median loss that was much higher than what younger people were losing. I can't speculate exactly why that is. It may be the types of scams. It may be the types of payment mechanisms involved with the scam. But just like an interesting little tidbit to keep in the back of your head. Really quickly, I wanted to tell you what the 5 top report categories were. So these are the things that consumers are telling us, that the kinds of scams that they're seeing and what people are losing money to. Number 1 is imposters. Again, we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but there's every sort of kind of story out there, lots of different permutations. They may pretend to be somebody legitimate from the government, from a legitimate business. They may pretend to be somebody that you actually know. They may pretend to be like an online dating love interest. There's lots of different stories. But basically, imposters are just somebody that pretends to be somebody legitimate, somebody that you trust, as a way to get you to turn over personal information or money to them. And we'll talk a little bit about how those scams are evolving. Online shopping is number 2. Interesting point about that, as a category, online shopping has been on our list, for many years, since online shopping has existed, but it's always been a small category. We never got all that many reports about it. But when we all went online during the pandemic, the scammers knew that, and that's where they went. They knew we were all online, so the scammers gravitated online. And so we saw those kinds of scams and fraud go up quite a bit more, and they just haven't come back down again. I don't know whether it's because we're all still spending a little bit more time online, or the scammers are just finding it to be a successful new venue for them, but we're still getting those online shopping reports. Prizes, sweepstakes, lotteries, again, that has been a category for a long, long time. Scammers are very clever about how they will try to convince you that you've won a lottery, that you've won sweepstakes, that there's just money on the table. You just need to click this link. You just need to give me your account number so we can deposit the money in your checking account. You get the point. They get you very excited and then pressure you to act immediately and send them money or send them some kind of information. And they're very, very persuasive. They're very believable, and people lose money that way. Investments is the number 4th category. Now, interesting thing about that losses for investments more than doubled between 2021 and 2022. In 2022, people reported losing $3.8 billion to investment scams. That could have something to do with cryptocurrency and people losing larger amounts of money. It could just be depending on what's happening in the economy. Sometimes we see more investment scams or more business opportunity type scams, and business opportunities, job opportunities was number 5 on the list. Okay, so scammers are still contacting people in all the same usual ways: telephone, email, texts, but they're also approaching people on social media. So we're starting to see more scams happening on social media. The stat here that was kind of interesting was that social media is responsible for the highest overall losses, 1.2 billion to scams that started on social media, enormous amount of money. But people individually are still losing a lot of money, the most money individually, to phone scams. So you just have to be aware that a scammer can approach you in a variety of different ways. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the specifics of these scams that I've mentioned. Imposters, impersonators, we sort of use those terms interchangeably. They may pretend to be somebody from the government that's tracking you down to pay back taxes, to say there's something wrong with your Social Security account and you need to get it fixed right away. There's been an uptick in scammers pretending to be from the Federal Trade Commission, saying they know that FTC legitimately gets millions and millions of dollars back to consumers every year through the redress program. We bring cases, we get that money back, and then we divide it up among the people that can show that they bought that product and lost money to it. That's kind of a gross oversimplification, but that's basically what the program is. And so the scammers try to take advantage of that. They may even have the names of FTC staff people, real FTC staff people, to try to trick you and to think that it's really the FTC. But the FTC is never going to charge you anything. The FTC is never going to say, the only way that you can make this problem go away, that you can claim your prize, that you can get what's coming to you, is by sending us this personal information or by sending us money and insisting that you pay by wire transfer, by a payment app, by cryptocurrency, by a gift card. Those are all methods that scammers use, right? And if this is the only thing that you walk away with today, I really want you to hold on to that. Pay attention to how somebody asks you to pay or is pressuring you to pay. If they insist the only way that you can pay is through wire transfer, mobile payment app, through cryptocurrency, or through buying gift cards and sending them the PIN numbers, walk away. That is a scam. You're going to see a lot of different scam stories. They're going to try a lot of different ways to gain your trust. And they change and evolve all the time. But that's the one consistency there. If you pay attention to how they ask you to pay, how they insist that you pay, chances are you'll be able to spot a scam. Because scammers want you to pay in ways that make it really, really difficult to get that money back, right? Almost impossible in most cases. And so that is probably the biggest red flag that I can give you to look out for a scam. And so this is the slide that sort of underlines that. The FTC, no government agency, no legitimate business is going to demand that you pay by bank or wire transfer, crypto, or gift cards. Only scammers do that. And I'm adding in there these payment apps like Venmo and Zelle. It's certainly legitimate for you to pay somebody that way. But if somebody's demanding that is the only way that you can pay them, you really want to think twice about that, because once you send that money, it's gone. It's very difficult to get it back. Unless it's somebody that you know, and you're sure that you're sending it to the account of somebody that you know, you can't get that money back. Okay, and this is exactly that point that I was just making. Know who you're sending money to before using a payment app. If you have one of these apps and you're using it, just in your ordinary life, you want to be sure that you don't that you protect that account, right? So that you don't share your credentials with anyone, and that if you have the option to set up multi-factor authentication, that's the use of a password and something else like a token or a code that gets text to you, something that's sent to your email to double check. It's just an added layer of security, and it really will help to keep your accounts a little bit more secure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about romance scams. So you probably have heard of these before. The scammers get on dating apps, they create fake profiles, but they're also on social media, and they may be following, especially if your account is public or if it's set fairly open and they're able to sort of see a lot of what you post. They may be paying attention to the kinds of things that you're posting that you're interested in, the kinds of if you're open about saying that you're looking for somebody to date, or they may privately message you and say, oh, you were interested in so many things. Oh, I'd really be interested in being your friend. Or they may try to strike up a friendship. They may try to strike up a romance if they suspect that maybe that's what you're interested in and that may be of interest to you. So you have to be careful. Just because you're not on an online dating site, that doesn't mean that these romance scammers can't find you on social media as well. So they'll spend some time, and this may not be like a quick phone call or a quick text to sort of check out whether they can get any response back. They may actually invest some time and some effort into pretending to get to know you, to try to gain your trust. This may go on for weeks, so that they really lull you into thinking you have an actual relationship with them. But there's always some excuse why you can't meet them, why you can't be in person, why they can't come see you. And that's when the stories start, that at some point they'll need money for something. And it's usually pretty persuasive. It sounds very legitimate. Very often it's that either they need hospital care or somebody close to them, a close friend, a family member, a child, an aunt, an elderly aunt, needs surgery, and they're trying to get the money together and they really need some help to be able to make this happen. They may ask for small amounts of money first. And when you see they're still around, and maybe they'll even pay you back, so that you really get that sense that you can trust them and that this is something legitimate. And then they'll ask you to send them larger and larger sums of money. Sometimes they'll just go right for the jugular and ask for that large sum right away. So I don't want you to feel like it's one or the other. You really just have to keep your wits about you. They're likely to demand that you pay them with gift cards, through a wire transfer, through maybe a payment app, and through cryptocurrency. And as we said before, those are really difficult ways to get your money back. Once it's gone, it's pretty much gone. There are some things that you can do, but that really just applies to gift cards. And so you don't want to send money through those ways to somebody that you don't know in real life, that you haven't met. Now, one thing I wanted to mention was we're seeing an interesting intersection between romance scams and cryptocurrency investment scams. The losses due to cryptocurrency used in fraud have skyrocketed. It's 60 times what it was in 2018, right? So in just a matter of 5 years, it's 60 times greater. Part of that is because more people are interested in cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency usually involves large amounts of money. Once you send it, it's gone, right? That's the whole point. It's not a centralized currency. So there's no way to get it back. And people are very interested in learning how to invest in cryptocurrency. And so sometimes these romance scammers will approach somebody on social media, and it will start as them wanting to start a relationship with you, or they'll approach you on an online dating site, want to start a relationship. And then at a certain point, they'll say, look, if we're going to have a future, if we're going to be together, we need to really build our nest egg. And I want to teach you to make money through cryptocurrency so that we can build that for our nest egg. And this is how I make money through cryptocurrency. And they may go to the trouble of setting up a fake dashboard so that you see like an account with your name on it, and you can put a small amount of money in. You can see it there. Perhaps you're even able to take it out and put it back in again, which gives people this false sense of security that it's a very safe thing to do. Well, I've got access to my account, so I know that there's no trouble. And they're willing to then turn over the large amount of money, and then the dashboard disappears, the romantic interest disappears. There's no way you can track them down. The money is gone. It's gone. If you've sent $10,000, that money is just gone. And it's got that added layer of harm to it, that people actually thought they were in a relationship with somebody. Not only is that person gone, but their money is gone. An extremely large amount of money is very often gone. Also, another point I wanted to mention when it comes to romance scams is that sometimes we find with people that identify as LGBTQ plus, they may be approached on dating sites, and somebody may want to start up a romance really fast, maybe get off of the online dating site and to communicate directly by text or email or something like that. And then they'll try to coax somebody into revealing a lot of information about themselves, maybe sharing compromising photos. And then at a certain point, the scammer will try to blackmail the person and say, if you don't send me money by gift card, wire transfer, crypto, then I'm going to out you to your friends and family. I'm going to tell your employer about what we talked about. I'm going to send pictures to all of these different people. Of course, that's terrifying for people. But if you pay that person, there is no guarantee that they won't stop asking for money, and they could release that information anyway. And that's the kind of thing you'd want to take up with law enforcement, because you don't want that hanging out there over your head. And better yet, to try to hold back a little bit until you meet people in person and you know for real that you're dealing with a real person and not a scammer. Okay, so I'm just going to touch quickly on bank impersonators, mostly because it's a very common kind of an imposter scam. They sort of fade and then they come back again. Sometimes they come back in different permutations, right? But it's always it's kind of threatening to get a text or an email from somebody that says they're from your bank, and that or a phone call, and that there's something wrong with your account, because most of the time you're like, I better get this fixed. I better get it fixed right away, right? So it's just like all the other scams. It sounds very persuasive. They're pressuring you to do something immediately. They're threatening that something terrible is going to happen unless you send them information and or money, and that they can help you make this problem go away. But you got to act right now. They want to pressure you to act immediately so that you don't have time to think and to just let it settle in your head, and maybe talk to somebody you trust to figure out what you should do. The first thing I want to let you know is don't trust caller ID, because caller ID can be spoofed. So that means that scammers can fake the caller ID, but through technology. That's probably the most that I know. I don't think I can go into any more detail about that with you. I just know that they can trick us into thinking the caller ID is real. Now, the reason I point that out is that sometimes people will look at that caller ID and the number looks legitimate. It looks like it's from your bank, or it looks like it's from a 202 Washington, D.C. number. So it must be a government agency. And you just can't use the caller ID as proof. That's all I'm saying. You can't use it as proof that the person that you're on the phone with is actually calling from that telephone number. So if anybody calls you or texts you out of the blue, you don't want to give them any personal information, right? You don't want to click on links in unexpected texts or emails, because that could bring you to a site that's run by the scammer, and they can download malicious software onto your laptop or your phone. And then that might be able to track you as you go around the internet. It may be able to log whatever keystrokes that you type or tap, so that it can steal your passwords and your account information without you really even knowing it, until your computer starts to fail a little bit because of the software. If you've clicked on a link by mistake, just update your phone and your computer software. Very often that will help you clean it up and get rid of it. Otherwise, you can take it to one of the commercial services to look at it to make sure it's clean. But very often, if you update your software, that should be able to help you get rid of the problem. So this is one that I wanted to mention because it's pretty new. We'd only heard about it for, I don't know, I think it was probably the last couple of weeks. And we're hearing mostly from consumers that are Korean, Vietnamese, or Latino. And they're getting a letter from a fake lawyer. So supposedly they're getting a letter from a lawyer that says they've got a client who's recently deceased, and you have got the same last name as that client. And they've got an insurance policy. It's unclaimed. There's nobody that's claiming this insurance policy. So the lawyer offers to put your name on the insurance policy so that you can get some of the proceeds. They'll split the proceeds between the lawyer, you, and they'll donate the rest to a charity, right? So it sounds very appealing, right? I'm going to get this money and nobody else is going to claim it. It's just, where is it going to go? If I don't get it, and people sort of convince themselves that this would be a great thing, right? And so this lawyer will then ask you for personal information so that they can add your name to the file, or maybe they'll charge you a fee for the services of doing a little bit of the legal work. And of course, there is no insurance policy. This is not a lawyer. There is no money for you. And, even though that's kind of a shaky premise to begin with, whether you should be doing that, but it really just doesn't exist. It's all fake. And so you've now just turned over information and or money to this person and you'll get nothing. Except ripped off. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about student loans, because so now that we're back into sort of repayment mode, right? This was kind of an open issue for a couple of years after the pandemic, and now we're back in repayment mode. And so this is the kind of thing that scammers take advantage of, right? There's confusion, there's something new, there's a change in the law, there's a change in the practice. All of a sudden, somebody may have to come up with payments, and they're going to, slip in there and try to convince you that they can help you get a better deal on a repayment plan. They may say they've got the best information. All you have to do is, share your FSA login number and they can help you with your student loan and figure all that stuff out. You don't want to do that. You want to go to studentaid.gov, which is the Department of Education website, studentaid.gov/repay, and you can get all the legitimate information that you need to figure out how to apply for a repayment plan, how to get into your account, and how to figure out the lay of the land, your particular situation, and how you can figure out what your repayment is going to be and get something that is workable for you. You definitely don't want, if somebody says that they can help you, you pay them, they can give you a hand. You don't want to share your login to FSA, because once they have that, they've got all kinds of personal information about you, right? That they can use for identity theft or to take money out of your accounts. And if you can enroll yourself in these plans for free, you don't necessarily need to have any help. So you want to be aware of that kind of a situation, and just go to studentaid.gov/repay to get yourself started. All right, so now we're at the time of year where we're starting to see, we probably have had at least 6 weather kinds of emergencies in the last few months, right? And hurricane season has just started, so we'll have another few months of possible weather-related emergencies. And so I wanted to share this URL with you, ftc.gov/weather emergencies. It'll link out to FEMA and some of the other actual emergency help sites. But the FTC site is really primarily about what you can do ahead of time to prepare, and how to keep your, you want to have your records, your financial records lined up, and your contact information. It's more of the consumer information to help you both prepare for these kinds of emergencies so that you can hit the ground running when it comes time to recover and to start to rebuild, and that you'll have your information with you safely, and that you'll be alert to know, if you've been in some kind of a weather emergency and you need help. You want to be aware, again, the scammers are going to come out of the woodwork. This is exactly the kind of situation where scammers thrive. When there's confusion, there's some kind of an emergency, people are desperate for help, people are really looking for solutions, and all of a sudden the scammers kind of appear out of nowhere, and if you just pay them, they'll make the problem go away. So you may see them, you may see scammy contractors coming around that will promise to fix something and they'll just make the problem worse. Sometimes you share information and money with them because they're insisting that you pay them in a certain way and that they'll take care of whatever your repair issues are, except they never come back. You may find people pretending to be from FEMA, and they'll insist that you pay them to file an application or pay them to get FEMA benefits. Again, FEMA is not going to charge you. So you don't want to do that. You want to know the legitimate site to go to find out how you can get legitimate FEMA help or legitimate help from your state or locality. So go to ftc.gov/weather emergencies and you can learn a little bit more about the kinds of information that's available in case you need them. You know, another issue we see as well when there are these kinds of natural disasters or a weather emergency or something along those lines are afterwards, even if you have not been affected by it, you'll see a lot of charitable solicitations to try to help the people that are victims of this kind of a weather emergency. And so the FTC site, ftc.gov/charities, I think that's the name of the URL for that. It gives you some information about how to look into charities, the kinds we've got some websites that there's like the BBB Wise Giving Alliance and give.org and some other websites where you can research to find out if a charity is legitimate. Because it runs the gamut, right? You want to make sure that you're dealing with a legitimate charity, so you run them down for that. But even in a legitimate charity, you want to see if the money that you're donating is actually going to the people that you want to receive it or to the causes that you want to receive it, right? If they've got very, very high administrative fees and only a small amount of money actually goes to the cause, it goes to help the community that you're looking to help, you may want to think twice about whether you want to donate to them. Doesn't mean that they're not legitimate, but it may not be the best use of your money, right? So you want to be aware of those kinds of things popping up, both the scammy ones and just if you want to give, you want to make sure that you give to the organization that's going to do the most good with your money, right? And our charity site can help you do that research and kind of figure that out. Okay, so let's see, what do we have next here? All right, so this isn't a scam I wanted to touch on briefly because there's a lot of talk about it. So family emergency scams happen. It's an imposter that pretends to be a loved one, whether it's your best friend or a friend or a family member, and they used to happen by you might get an email that sounded kind of funny. It maybe didn't quite line up with how your person would sound in an email, but it would say, "I'm traveling. I've lost my, I was mugged. I don't have my passport. I just need a little bit of money to get myself together to be able to get home. Can you wire it here so that I can get it?" Or a phone call would come in and say, "Hey, grandma, it's me," but there was a lot of static on the line and you couldn't quite hear clearly. And you got to remember, that call may have come into 1 million people that didn't have a grandchild, or that didn't have a son, or they didn't have anybody traveling, or that didn't believe it at all. But all they needed was a small percent. If it goes out to 10 million people and a handful of them respond because they're confused, they're still getting that person's money, right? They keep sending out millions of calls. That's how it works. And so, because I could never understand, well, how could you not recognize, a person's voice? But the way that they have the static and it's very chaotic, and they make sure they whip you into this fearful state, this sense of urgency, it's an emergency, something terrible is going to happen. It involves somebody that you're close to, and you want to help right away, and you're afraid to get off the phone because you're afraid you might not be able to contact your loved one if you lose contact with this phone call, right? That's exactly what they want you to feel. So the twist on that is now through artificial intelligence, AI. So with AI voice cloning technology, it's relatively easy for a scammer to find clips, video clips or sound clips of somebody's voice, and then to clone it so they can make it sound like your loved one is saying whatever it is they want them to say. I haven't heard these necessarily. I think I've only heard like little snippets. I have never heard one of these scam calls myself. I don't know how scary it is. I don't know how pervasive it is. I don't know if it's persuasive. I don't know if it really sounded like somebody that I know, but the descriptions of them are kind of scary when you hear media reports. It sounds like somebody will call and say, we've kidnapped your daughter, we've kidnapped your son. We're holding them for ransom, and you need to pay us this way. Again, ways that you can't trace it, ways you can't get the money back. And then in the background, you might hear somebody saying, please pay them, or I'm so scared, or mom, please help, dad, please help, or maybe a little bit more generic, but the voice really sounds like somebody that you know. It really sounds like your person. And so, of course, it's terrifying, and it's much harder to break that bond and to have somebody stop and think and, and try to do a little digging. But that's exactly how you combat this. If you get one of these calls, you're going to try to contact that person on a number that you know is legitimate. Either somebody with you can call on their phone, or you try to put the other call on hold and call that person. And I would say 99.9% of the time, you're going to get that person that you're trying to reach. And if you can't, try to contact somebody else that's close to them that can tell you where they are, or who they may be with them. If you stop and take a breath and do a little bit of research, you should be able to track down where that person is, and then you're dealing with a scammer. I know it's difficult and it's a little scary, but that's kind of like the best way to combat that. You've got to be skeptical and then try to track that person down on your own. I had one other point and I don't remember what it is now. I'm going to have to get back to it. Anyway, you want to call that person to verify at a number that you know is theirs, not something that the scammer tells you, or not based solely on what you're hearing in the background. Okay. So scammers are shipping COVID-19 tests out to people and then invoicing them and expecting you to pay for them. They'll send you a threatening letter and say that you need to call this number and pay with a credit card, or somehow send them payment. And so we're here to tell you, you don't have to do that. If somebody sends you something out of the blue, you don't need to pay for it. And the scammers are counting on, in this kind of a situation, they're counting on the fact that, we're heading back into cooler weather. People may be thinking about getting tested again. Holidays are coming up before traveling. People may want to get tested. And so that's already going to be on your mind. And now the federal government isn't subsidizing the cost of the tests anymore. And so people may be thinking that there was some sort of a confusion that, they're not being reimbursed, but now they're due these tests. They have to have them, but they have to pay for them somehow. And so you don't. If somebody sends you COVID tests out of the blue and they're sending you a threatening letter, you can throw that letter away. You don't have to return the tests. You don't have to pay for them. But you should report it to FTC, reportfraud.ftc.gov, because we want to hear about that, because it's really just a way for these scammers to try to get personal information and money from you. Okay, so I'm going to mention this just because it's a big change, and well, let's talk about it. So during the course of the pandemic, anybody that was eligible for Medicaid was able to stay on Medicaid without having to file new paperwork to determine their eligibility, or to just, even if they were, there was no need to determine eligibility, they needed to renew. You just have to renew it. I think it's every couple of years. So nobody had to do that during the pandemic, right? Those requirements were suspended so that everybody had coverage during COVID. So those protections have just been rolled back, And now everybody that's eligible for Medicaid has to go back to enrolling every year. So you either enroll brand new or you renew every year. But there is probably a large subset of people, probably millions, who have never had to do this before. They were automatically enrolled and they've never had to do this paperwork. They've never had to reach out and go through this process. It's a little confusing because you enroll through your state Medicaid agency, and every state Medicaid agency it's got kind of a slightly different name, and their processes can be a little bit different. So it's hard for me to say, this is what the process is, this is who's going to contact you, right? Because it may differ. But the scammers know that, and they're going to try to reach out to you and say they can help you take care of your Medicaid paperwork. They can help you renew. They can help you enroll. If you just pay them, and they're going to want you to share information, and they're going to try to get you to pay. And so we want people to know that it's free. To renew or enroll in Medicaid is free. You don't have to pay anybody to do it. Even if they say they're from your state Medicaid agency, your real state Medicaid agency is never going to charge you. They're never going to ask you to pay them to enroll or to renew. And so people should know that they need to be on the lookout for that paperwork. It should be coming directly to your home. There may be some instances where maybe if you've moved or if something has changed, the paperwork may get hung up a little bit. You can contact your state Medicaid agency. And if you go to medicaid.gov, there is a list of the various state agencies with a link, and you can go through there and check that out. I think the more direct link is medicaid.gov/renewals if you wanted to go right to that renewal page, but medicaid.gov will get you there. And so that's a good way to get started if you're pretty sure that you're eligible and you haven't seen the paperwork, or you just want to check into it. Now, for some people, they're going to find out that they're not eligible for Medicaid anymore, and they're going to need to go out and look for health insurance on the open market. So you want to start at healthcare.gov and look around there, because that's where you can research various plans, what they cover, and what they cost. Healthcare.gov does not charge you for a quote on for a health insurance quote. So if somebody is charging you for that, it's not the real healthcare.gov, and you don't need to pay for that. And that way you can find out what's there and maybe find a plan that works for you and that's a reasonable cost. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things. Let's see how we're doing for time. I'm going to hurry up here so that we have some time for questions. The ways that you can protect yourself online. So these all go back to sort of the stuff that we talked about. Make sure your accounts are locked down, right? So keep your software, your security software up to date. Make sure that you have strong passwords on your accounts. Set up that extra layer of security with multi-factor authentication whenever you can. It's not offered everywhere. It's increasingly offered more and more. But when it's offered, do it. It just adds that little bit of extra, right? So it used to be that public Wi-Fi was not secure at all, and you really had to worry about it, but not so much anymore. Public Wi-Fi is actually pretty secure. They're usually locked down, so that's a great thing. So you got to make sure that you secure your own home Wi-Fi. However you have it set up, make sure that you've got some security on it, because you're probably going to be doing most of your secured transactions through your home Wi-Fi. You want to protect your computer and your phone. So again, make sure that all that software is up to date. Before you turn in if you recycle your phone or you give it to somebody or you donate it, make sure that it's wiped clean. There are software programs out there. There are some that are free, or you could go to a store or to your manufacturer and find out how to wipe your phone clean with that software. You probably need to take out a SIM card so that all your data isn't still stuck in the phone. And you want to double check that your laptop, your iPad, your tablet, your phone, whatever the device is, that before you surrender it someplace else, that all of the data is wiped off of that so that somebody can't just get all your data by getting that phone. You want to recognize those attempts to steal your information, right? Those are the unexpected texts, the unexpected phone calls, the unexpected emails that are trying to get you to act fast to send them money. Once you know what those warning signs are, you're paying attention to how they're asking you to pay, you're going to be able to spot when that scam comes in and just stop, take a breath, and you can figure it out from there. And then back things up. So you want to make sure that you save your files, just regular saving on your laptop and on your phone or whatever. But especially for your laptop files, you want to try to save them either up to the cloud or to like a hard drive, some sort of an external device. Some people like on the device itself, the cloud and the external device, sort of belts and suspenders. They want to save it everywhere to make sure that they have it. If that's too much for you, just pick one or the other. Pick the hard drive or pick the cloud. But you want to have it, in addition to however you save it on your device, so that if malicious software gets onto your device, or if there's like a ransomware attack and somebody is threatening to steal all of your data and not give it back to you unless you pay them, then you can clean your laptop off and reload all your data. Once that you've gotten rid of that malicious software, you don't have to pay anybody anything. You already have your data. If you haven't backed it up and saved it, you're in a little bit more of a dicey situation. I still wouldn't recommend paying, because there's no guarantee that they're going to give you the data back or that they're not going to keep asking you for money. But you don't have to start from scratch. If you've at least done a backup and it's off of your computer, you'll be able to get your information back, mostly. And this is what I was talking about. We've got an article on the FTC website, and I can share these links after the fact to our article about what to do to remove personal information from your phone before you get rid of it. And I just wanted to make this one last point. When we were talking about recognizing the signs of a scam, recognizing phishing attempts when somebody's trying to fish around to get your information. Online quizzes, the sort of like the fun things you see on social media, it might tell you what kind, which Kardashian are you, or what kind of an artist would you be, or what they're basically doing are scraping all kinds of data from your profile. You're giving them permission to get in there and just take all of that data. And in addition to being something fun, that even if the creators of that quiz aren't necessarily going to do anything bad with that information, you don't necessarily want them to have it, because somebody could steal it from them and then scam you or steal your identity or things like that. It's just going to help fishers if you share that information online. You want to share with care and be careful what you're sharing on any kind of social media site. Okay, I wanted to mention this fast because we did talk about it earlier. What do you do if you paid a scammer? If you used a payment app like Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, we've got an article that gives you information about the steps you can take if you've paid a scammer in a variety of different situations. I use the information from the payment apps for the slide just because it's a little bit newer and people may not be as familiar. You may be a little bit more familiar if you paid somebody with a credit card, what your protections are and how you can call the credit card company and try to stop that transaction. This is what you would do if you paid somebody through one of those payment apps, to try to report it, to stop the transaction, to try to get your money back. It's not guaranteed, but it's worth a try. Similarly, it used to be when you paid by a gift card, that money was completely gone immediately. There was just no way to get it back. But more credit card companies are starting to recognize the fact that a lot of fraud is happening with those credit cards. And they're putting more steps into place to freeze those transactions if they seem suspicious. And if you can get to the gift card company while that transaction is frozen, you may be able to get at least some of that money back. but you'd have to act fast. So if you think you sent money to a scammer using a gift card, the minute you realize what you've done, you may have sent it to a scammer, you want to contact that gift card company, tell them it was a scam, tell them you want your money back, and then see what they say and see if you got it in time. Even if it's been a couple of days, I would still try. It's always worth a try, because you definitely won't get it back if you don't ask. And so it's always worth asking. It's always worth a try. But usually the sooner you ask, the better, the better the chance is. If you go to ftc.gov/gift cards, we've got an article that sort of explains all of this in more detail. And then there's a list at the bottom of like the 10 biggest gift card issuers, and it gives you a link to their site and the customer service telephone number to call. If you just sort of bookmark that someplace or printed it out and saved it someplace, if you ever needed it, it would make it a lot quicker to call and to report it to the gift card company if you had that number available right away. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about FTC resources, and then we can get to some questions. IdentityTheft.gov is FTC's one-stop resource for somebody who suspects identity theft. Let's face it, a lot of these scams, the purpose is to get you to send money directly, but they also may want your personal information to either sell it to identity thieves or to commit identity theft themselves. So if you think you've encountered identity theft, you want to go here. You'll get a personalized recovery plan based on the kind of identity theft situation that you're facing. When you print out your report, I would always recommend saving it as a PDF, saving it onto your laptop, and printing it out. It prints out as what's known as an identity theft report, and that's a term of art in the law. And so you can take that and attach a letter to it to get the recovery process started, so you can send it to the company, like a utility company, if you think that's where the identity theft happened, or to a credit card company. You can send a letter with the identity theft report to the credit reporting company and tell them you want to get these unauthorized charges off of your credit report. There are certain steps that you need to take right away, and IdentityTheft.gov can help you do that and do it in a more streamlined kind of way. It's free, it's secure, there's chat and phone support, and if you're more comfortable reporting in Spanish, it's available in Spanish as well. If you want to learn a little bit more about scams, you can go to consumer.ftc.gov. You can ignore militaryconsumer.gov. That's my slide for military audiences. It's roughly the same information, but just with more of a military slant to it, and how scammers are trying to cheat service members, military families, and veterans. If you want to get consumer alerts and to stay up on how these scams are evolving, go to ftc.gov/consumer alerts. And if you want to order print materials in bulk, if you want 1 or 2 copies, the best thing to do is just go to the website and print them out. But if you want to order 25, 50 copies and hand them out to friends, or if you belong to a fraternal organization or at your kid's school or even at the library, you go to ftc.gov/bulk order, and you can order a large number of our materials in print. We've got scam prevention materials in other languages. If you go to ftc.gov/languages, you can see what languages are available and what materials are there. Again, these can be very helpful in your community, depending on the people you're interacting with, and if you want to put on programming or something like that. Again, we don't need that. I wanted to mention that we've got a Fighting Consumer Fraud and Identity Theft in Kansas webinar coming up tomorrow at 10:30. If anybody's interested, I'm happy. Marty, I can send you the link and you can share it with anybody that happens to be interested in that. I just wanted to mention it. It'll probably go into a little bit more detail on identity theft. It'll cover some of the stuff that I talked about today. But anyway, that's there if folks are interested. If you see any of these scams, whether you've lost money or not, we really, really, really implore you to go to reportfraud.ftc.gov. It really helps us keep our finger on the pulse so that we have some idea of how much money people might be losing, what scams are coming across the computer, the phone, social media, wherever. And it's one way that we can modify our materials so that we know we're trying to stay a step ahead and let people know what scams are coming down the pike. And that's the end of the formal presentation, but I am happy to take questions in whatever time we have left. And thank you so much.
Carol, that was wonderful. And even though I've sat through another session that you gave us a couple of years ago for the Johnson County Library, I always learn new things. So thank you. So far, we have just one question,
Sure.
and I think you may have answered it with one of those last slides. But the question is, a friend's email was hacked. Specifically, the hackers made up a Hotmail account with her name using the same name as her Gmail. And the hacker sent all of her contacts a message asking for a favor. Most of us recognize the scam. How should she report this hack?
I would report it. If you go to reportfraud.ftc.gov, it'll give you different categories that you can pick out. And I don't know them off the top of my head right here. I would guess that this is probably both an imposter scam and hacked email. And I don't, when we're finished, I'm going to pull up an article for you to share. If this person is interested, we do have an article about what to do if your email's been hacked. So there are different steps that you can follow to make sure things are cleaned out. And then even once you're sure you've got your machine back and it's cleaned, you're going to need to go change passwords. You're going to need to check your inbox to see what kinds of emails were sent out that supposedly came from you, but maybe didn't. There's a little bit of investigative work that you probably want to do to make sure that you've got it completely cleaned up. Okay. And the second question is how to sign up for the webinar on September 21st that you mentioned. Okay. If you don't, no need to sign up. I have the link and I can share it with you. Okay, wonderful. Do you want to share that in the chat, or do you want to share it with me and I can mail it out to everyone? I can email it out to all the registrants of this program? That sounds like a great plan. Okay, that's what we'll do. And then the other question is actually for me, and that is, will the recording be available to anyone who missed the presentation or anyone who wants to view it again to get some of those valuable links? And yes, it will be. And I've actually put the link to our personal finance research webpage. Just go to jocolibrary.org, look in the research tab and under personal finance, go to that page and you'll find our online programs archive for any programs that we've done related to personal finance. We also have the same thing for any programs that we do related to career development as well. So that's been, I always say that was one of the silver linings of the pandemic, is that we went online with a lot of our programs and we recorded them and then we posted them so that they're available for people to watch on demand at their point of need. So and I'll include a link to, I think I included a link to our personal finance archives page in the reminders that I sent out for this program, but I'll also send them out in the post message with the link that Carol will provide us for the webinar tomorrow related to the Kansas scams and fraud. Any other questions? I don't see anything else in the chat. So, Carol, thank you again for presenting for us. I love having you with us. And God knows this information is so valuable and so needed. So I'm
thrilled that we can post it on our website and have it available to people when they need it. And I thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And look for the email that I send out shortly at some point today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.